I'd like to welcome everybody for coming out on a Sunday afternoon. I know we had the World Cup today, and thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Our goal for this forum is to give residents a practical understanding of how our community prepares for emergencies, what they can do to be ready, how they can become involved in helping keep Orient resilient. I'm Jane Ash. I coordinate the emergency management information for Orient Association. My background includes 33 years as a volunteer emergency medical technician, where I served also as chief. 22 years serving in the Office of Emergency Management, including 12 years as a municipal emergency management coordinator for Warren Township, New Jersey, where I coordinated the preparation, response, recovery, and mitigation for over a dozen federally declared disasters. I also served as planning chief of the Somerset County Search and Rescue Team, and I'm a trained American Red Cross shelter manager, where I have managed several large emergency community shelters during disasters. These experiences have given me firsthand knowledge of the importance of preparedness, coordination, and community resilience. Formed through trusted sources and maintaining communication with family, neighbors, and local officials are an essential part of being prepared. After a hurricane or major storm, emergency responders may be overwhelmed, and help may not be immediately available. Power outages and damage to communication systems can make phone calls extremely difficult. So the best way to do that, if everything is down, is to text or maybe email. Usually phone calls, because the lines are down and they're overwhelmed. There are other ways to get through. Please don't call 911 to report power outages, ask for traffic updates, or request general information. Reserve 911 for life-threatening emergencies so dispatchers can prioritize those who need immediate assistance. Since communication is essential during any emergency event, we want you all to know how to receive emergency alerts. So our plan for the Orient Association is to use our e-blast. We have a pretty extensive, thanks to my husband, Tony Ash, over there. He has a pretty extensive, about maybe 700 people on our email blast. So we're encouraging you all to join that. And that will be a way of us to communicate with you. And we'll be getting information from the fire department, from the police department, from the highway department, and from OEM, Southold OEM, to be able to get information out to you. You get information back to us. And that's, again, an essential part of communication, central part of emergency management. Also, if you look, I put up some of these posters you can scan. If you're not a member of Orient Association, you can also go on the website, orientassociation.org, and click subscribe to OA News. It's a little icon in the upper right-hand corner. And the website also includes an emergency management tab with additional information. So what's happening today, we're being recorded, and we're also going to put out the information about emergency management on the website. So emergency situations can arise unexpectedly, but being prepared can make all the difference to you and your family. So here are a couple concepts to get started. Consider your risk and responsibility. The Orient Fire Department is composed of residents who are highly trained, emergency volunteers, and it has resources, but they're limited. The number one cause of death during a hurricane is storm surge, which here it would be very possible. The temptation to tough it out in your home or put lives at risk, yours and the personnel who may be sent on an otherwise avoidable rescue mission, we're trying to avoid that. Know the hurricane risk in your area. Learn the storm surge history and elevation of your area. If you live in an identified flood zone or slosh, and slosh means sea, lake, and overland surges from hurricanes area, and know that your house has been inundated by water in past storms, then don't stay in your house during a severe storm or hurricane. Do not try to ride the storm out on a boat. And there's a good story there. The fire department will tell you about it. But you could determine where to move your boat in an emergency. You probably have to take it out of the water. For the medically or elderly fragile, families with small children, and anyone who cannot sustain being in an environment with lengthy power outages, plan to leave ahead of time. Travel to a relative or friend located out of the storm impact. Staying in a hotel is an option. And if you have a second home, which is pretty common here, that is not going to be affected by the storm path, then go to that home. If an evacuation is ordered by Southold Township, follow the instructions to evacuate and do so immediately. Develop a disaster plan for you and your family. If staying home became unsafe, where would you go and how would you get there? Gather supplies. Ensure that you have flashlight batteries and at least a 3 to 7 day supply of water and non-perishable food in your household. And update it regularly, and don't forget about pets. Have a plan to secure your home. Know how and when to turn off your water, gas, and electricity. Clear loose and clogged rain gutters and downspouts. Keep trees and shrubbery trimmed with wood, and check up on your insurance. And we'll be sending more information about that out in the Orient Association newsletter. And just so you know, Don's going to talk about the shelters, but the town shelters do not provide food or any sort of emergency provisions. Shelters will be open ahead of time if you need to set out the storm because you think your house is inundated with water. It will be closed during the storm and reopened again when the roads are safe to travel. So that gets us to Don King over here. Don Fisher. Sorry, Don Fisher. Okay, so I'm not, okay. Don Fisher. Let me see. It's my pleasure to introduce Don Fisher, whose remarkable 54 years of service have helped keep the people of Southold and the East End safe. Don has dedicated his life to emergency response as a firefighter, an emergency medical technician, and an EMT instructor, an emergency communications leader, and an organizer in emergency management. For 22 years, Don served the East End and Suffolk County as a certified instructor coordinator for the New York State EMT classes. He taught American Red Cross first aid and CPR classes on Plum Island, at the Animal Disease Laboratory, and adult education programs in the Southold School District. In 1993, Don joined the Southold Town Emergency Management Committee as an emergency coordinator for communication. He leads our local amateur radio emergency services, or ARS group, and served the 1995 West Hampton wildfires, the TWA Flight 800 disaster, and the Y2K experience in the September 11, 2001 attack on the World Trade Center, as well as numerous hurricane call-ups over the past 33 years. Since 2013, Mr. Fisher has served on the Emergency Management Subcommittee for Shelter Operations on the town of Southold, and he's going to talk about what to do, how to prepare for disaster, and the role of the emergency shelter, Oyster Pond School, and how you can volunteer to help if we ever have to. Don, please welcome Don Fisher.
Thank you, Jane. And actually, when Jane spoke to me first, you wanted me to explain to the folks what the Office of Emergency Management was. So, being something of a historian, I enjoy telling a little bit of the history. How did we get where we are? And you do have in Southold Office of Emergency Management. How many people know what the Office of Emergency Management does? Yeah, it's kind of like out there. What are they really doing? So, a little history. When I started on this journey of being involved with emergency services was 1972. I joined as a 19-year-old Southolder, the Southold Fire Department. And at that time, there was no discussion of an Office of Emergency Management. It just wasn't a thing. There were fire departments from Orient, East Marion, Greenport, Southold, Cutchogue, and Mattatuck. And we had our police department that went from Laurel to Orient. That was it. When I got involved, everything that was an emergency, whether it was man-made or if it was a natural disaster, a hurricane coming up the coast, we depended on the fire department and we depended on the police department to take care of everything. Now, today, emergency EMS, emergency medical services, is a big thing. You got an ambulance that will take you to the hospital with Orient Fire Department. Andy, I'm going to ask you, in 1972, did you have the ambulance? I want to say yes. I want to say yes. Because I got to hook into emergency services for emergency medicine. When I joined the fire department, only Orient, your community, and Greenport had an ambulance. Because those are the three parts of emergencies when you think about it: your fire, your EMS, and your police. Now, Southold, Cutchogue, Mattatuck, and East Marion, the ambulance came from DeFriest Funeral Home. And that was a thing. Historically, your funeral directors would provide ambulance service to the communities before there was such a thing as EMS. And we were primarily first aiders. We didn't even know CPR back then. We would stop the bleeding, put a splint on. It was very rudimentary. It's not what we're used to today. But this was the history of how we get to an Office of Emergency Management. We know that we have big events, 9/11, the wildfires. And the wildfires that we had here back in 1995, they were having them out west, just like they do today, much earlier. In 1970, they were very much like us, with a fire department, a police department, and an ambulance service. But the fires were so great, just as they are today, they needed to have some way to coordinate all the resources that were available between the police, the fire, and the ambulance rescue squads. So the chiefs in Southern California got together and said, let's organize an office within the state that's going to be able to pull resources from all parts of the state, all parts of the county, and start to organize for the next big wildfire. So this was just getting started when I became a fireman in 1972. And it had not moved from California. This theory, this plan, hadn't moved out here. We were still a fire department, a police department, and a funeral service. That's how we were doing business. Well, over the last 54 years, things have moved forward. And we have had our own big events here, as I mentioned. Flight 800, the wildfires, we were involved with 9/11. These things came to the forefront. And the whole theory of having an office where you could, before the action happened, before the event, get organized and get the resources from police, fire, EMS together, and by extension, the other things we need. We may need bulldozers and payloaders. They're going to come from the highway department. We may need military. That's going to come from our state National Guard. Now we're starting to see other agencies that can help us in a large emergency. Well, somebody has to be able to coordinate those resources. I want to say it was during Tom Wickham's administration as our supervisor. So we're going back to 1990. That was the first time that your township started what we called our Emergency Management Committee. Today, it's a real office. It's happening in Town Hall. At that time, it was a loose organization within the town to put together a group of people that could manage all the different resources that we now have identified so that if we have a big event, we can work more efficiently. We can coordinate with communications, as Jane said, so that people are talking to each other before, during, and after the event, whatever that might be. So Southold Town Emergency Management started 20 years after it started in the West Coast. And it's grown over the last 20, 30 years into a much more refined and organized group within your town. People who are on your emergency management committee, and Jane asked me to identify them. Our supervisor, he's our emergency manager, and that's a position that's recognized by the state of New York. So he is the person who could call out for a state of emergency, which when an official state of emergency is called, it opens us up to be able to get resources from the state, from the county, and to be able to do things with locally that we normally wouldn't be able to. We can close roads, as one example. Tell people to go to a shelter, as another example. So during a state of emergency that's declared, it has to be declared by the supervisor or someone that he or she would appoint. Say they were out of state or they were away, they would appoint someone. So once in a while, somebody says, well, I understand the supervisor's on vacation and he's going to Italy. I want you all to know that before the supervisor leaves, someone in town government has been appointed. And that person now takes over the official state-recognized emergency manager's position. And they have all the power to do the things that our supervisor would do if he was away. And that's a normal standard procedure. Now, we have deputy emergency managers. Our police chief, Stephen Grattan, he is a deputy emergency manager. Jackie Martinez, who is in charge of our senior citizen and human resources facilities in town, sees to it our seniors from Orient to Laurel get lunches delivered and look after our older folks and does a lot of outreach with the community. She is an assistant emergency manager on the committee. Our highway superintendent, Dan Goodwin, he is also an assistant emergency manager. As I said, if we have a big event, we may need a bulldozer, we may need a payloader, we may need dump trucks to move trees that are down so that you can get up and down your street. So very important to have our resources that come to us through the highway department. So Danny is an assistant emergency manager. We have coordinators on your team. So far we've got Al, we've got Steve, we've got Jackie from our human resources, and we've got Dan. There's a couple of other people that are on them. Remember, our fire departments on a regular day-to-day basis are the first people we turn to for an automobile accident, a fire, someone's having a heart attack. After 911, and we dispatch a police car, the fire departments in each of the 6 hamlets are dispatched to bring an ambulance and the EMTs and the paramedics to you. So it's very important we have coordination with the 6 departments. So we have a fire coordinator, a gentleman by the name of Eric Haase. He also sits on the committee. And as we know, we have many people who are bilingual or just speak Spanish today or another language. So Sonia Spar, who is the town's liaison and person of human resources and social work to communicate with our Spanish community, she's a coordinator on our committee. And then finally, you get to me and a fellow by the name of Charlie Burnham. We became involved with the Office of Emergency Management in 1993 as amateur radio operators. Again, as Jane mentioned, communications is very important, especially during an emergency. And if we should lose our cell phones because of everybody trying to make a phone call, and we saw that during 9/11, cell phone service in southern Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn was non-existent. If we lose optimum and our ability to communicate with emails and being able to talk back and forth digitally, we could be in a lot of trouble. So the amateur radio community, volunteers who have licenses to own radios that can talk around the world. We volunteer as the Amateur Radio Emergency Services. It's a national organization. It's run out of Newington, Connecticut. So Charlie Burnham from Southold and I, we sit on the committee so that you know that your communities and your town has a way to talk outside of the area if we should lose what we think of as being able to communicate every day. So that's everybody on your standing emergency management committee in Southold, and we meet regularly. Bobby comes in as a lieutenant in the police department, Bob Haase, and works very closely with Steve Grattan. We are ready and prepared to give you the type of protection that you need. Now, there are four things that an Office of Emergency Management concerns itself with. The first is mitigation. We know what our hazards are from a hurricane, flooding. We prepare before we even think about having it. Now, the town has just coming to a point where they're finishing up a lot of research of gathering data for road ends and flooding areas in town. And through Dan and other departments, they're working to try and eliminate some flooding. And if not, to make sure that people that live in the area know that they're in a flood-prone area. Mitigation. Know what your hazards are and find out so that you can, number two, prepare. Now, I come in a little bit with the preparation. I have a class that I give for emergency preparation. And if you like that and you wish to volunteer at our shelter, which is the Orient School, I give another class specific so that you can come and be a host if we have to open the school as a shelter. So preparation, what you need to do at home to be prepared when the storm hits. How you go about that, that's a whole nother class. But that's the second thing that the Office of Emergency Management concerns itself with. Mitigation. What are our hazards? How can we correct those hazards before we get too far? Preparation. Have the community ready to go. And then there's the actual operation or the response. We don't go out and do the things. That's where we look at the fire department, the police department, and the EMS. They are the boots on the ground, just as they have been since 1972. Our committee helps to organize those resources, but when you have an emergency in your hamlet, you're depending on the Orient Fire Department to take care of those emergencies, even if it's a large-scale hurricane where everyone from Mattituck to Orient's been affected. And it's that part of emergency management that gets in the newspaper. It's our good firefighters, our EMTs, our police officers. It's the actual response to whatever happens. The fourth thing that your emergency management office looks at is recovery. Get the roads open. Go about and see what houses may not be able to be occupied again. Prepare, bring in supplies so that you can have a place to go, like the community center in Peconic, and pick up donations of cleaning supplies and things. So recovery is our last of the four things that the emergency management office or committee looks to do for you. So that's how we got here, from wildfires in California to our hurricanes here on the North Fork. And we started in 1990, and here we are today, moving forward and staying on top of things. Now, as I say, part of that, the resources, what if you do have to leave your home? Your house is flooding, you know that you're in a low area, and for your safety, what should you do? Real quickly, because I have a whole, about 3-hour class that I give, and I can give that again and have you come out to that. But if we're going to have a hurricane, consider if you have a second home outside of this area, get in your car and leave Orient and go to your home that may or may not be in a better place. Now, if it's not, it may be safer to stay here and do what we call shelter in place. Because maybe your second home is in Port Washington on the Sound, and you've got a bigger flooding problem at your primary home. Don't leave here, stay here. But if you have a better place that has a higher elevation, maybe upstate, away from the shoreline, and you can go before the hurricane comes, the first thing to do would be to leave. Second thing would be to shelter in place. Have people that you communicate with before the storm, friends, relatives, so that they know what your plan is, what you're going to do if it gets bad. And if it does get bad, and it looks like you have to leave your home here, you're going to come to the Orient School. And we will have a facility there that you can stay in. It's brick, it's a solid building, and you'll wait there until the storm passes. Recovery, you'll get a chance to go home. So if you are interested in taking the class and being involved as a volunteer, I like to call you hosts at our shelter here at the Orient School. Before you go home, I do have a sign-up sheet. We're always looking for volunteers, and we'll get together and we'll have a class later in the fall or early part of the winter. And some of you I know have taken my class before, and love to have you be a part of the Orient community at the school. Fortunately, we haven't had to open it in quite a while. Well, hopefully we don't have to. All right, Jane, you want to introduce Dan?
Thank you, Don, very much. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Highway Superintendent for Southold Town, Dan Goodwin. Represents one of the most important and often least recognized first responder organizations in our community. While we often think of police, fire, and emergency medical services during an emergency, the Highway Department is among the first to respond, clearing fallen trees, removing debris, opening roads for emergency vehicles, managing flooding, and restoring safe access when every minute counts. Their work is essential before, during, and after storms and other disasters. Dan Goodwin is a mechanical engineer and lifelong Cutchogue resident. He was elected Highway Superintendent in 2021, took office in January 2022, and re-elected in 2025, bringing with him hands-on infrastructure experience leading teams of hazmat technicians, equipment operators, and professional drivers on emergency response, industrial maintenance, and infrastructure projects up and down the East Coast. In Orient, one of our biggest concerns is what happens if the causeway is cut off during a major storm. Dan is going to, I got the Dan and Don mixed up. Dan is going to share how the Highway Department would deal with that emergency if it occurs in Orient, as well as how the Highway Department coordinates with other agencies and what residents can do to help keep themselves safe and our community safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. So I'm Dan, the Highway Superintendent. A lot of what Don talked about, he kind of touched on a lot of it, but preparedness is a big part of, getting ready for an emergency, and God forbid if one actually happens. That's something that we practice on a daily basis at the Highway Department. I mean, all the work that we do every single day, whether it's paving a road, cutting down trees, clearing back brush out of the roads, even as simple as it might seem and unrelated, sweeping the streets, all keep your drainage structures clean, your ditches clean, and allow us to get a little bit of a closer eye on what's going on out there on the road to remove as many potential hazards as possible. So, eagle eye view of Southold Town, we have about 400 lane miles of roadway in the Southold Town network. Orient accounts for about 9 to 10 of those miles. So decent size for the size of the community out here. Orient does have a lot of private roads, and Orient also has a state maintained road, State Route 25. So a big concern out here, as Jane mentioned, is State Route 25 in the Causeway area. It's a concern of ours also, for a number of reasons. The big one that everybody's afraid of is the causeway becoming flooded and essentially Orient and beyond becoming an island and cut off from the rest of mainland Southold. So the way we account for this with the Highway Department is by staging equipment and a crew member out here. And that crew member is a heavy equipment operator. We have various classifications of operator within the Highway Department. So he's the highest level of operator that we have. So he has the ability to operate a front end loader, a large front end loader, whatever size dump truck we may need, snowplow truck we may need, any small tools, chainsaws, things of that nature. And with our partnership with the fire department, you'll see that equipment staged there occasionally if we know that there's going to be a weather event. And that's even something that you might regularly see throughout the course of the summer. If we're anticipating that we're going to have a big windstorm or something of that nature, we'll pre-position that equipment out this way just so that we can deploy that much faster. You know, it's quicker for us to get into a pickup truck and come out here at 50 miles an hour than it is to bring a 35,000 pound payloader out here at 16 miles an hour. So that's sort of that preparation. And, you know, if it costs us a little bit of time to put that out here, it's money well spent as far as the labor to have it out here on the ground ready to go at a moment's notice. Now, say that we do have a large weather event going on. Could be a winter storm. That person is out here plowing the roads, keeping the roads open. He has a front end loader. He has his plow truck that he's in, his normal plow truck. He has a larger plow truck. And we start to get a wind-driven high tide cycle where we have concerns of water coming over the causeway. All right. We will then put a second employee out here as well so that they are teamed up and paired up to work together. So back to, 9 to 10 miles of roadway in Orient. Since it is a fairly unique situation out here and we have one person dedicated to that area, it is a lower amount of road per employee than anywhere else on mainland Southold. So that is a nice benefit for the people of Orient. He's going to be able to get to every place more often. He's going to be able to respond much quicker to a place. We have direct radio communication between our office and Peconic with the equipment that he has through a radio system that we have in our trucks. We have direct radio communication with the police department, and we monitor their channels to make sure, if there's something going on, that we can respond right over there directly. So we have this boots on the ground assessment now going on through this employee or myself even sometimes. And we go out and we look for a couple different things, right? Is there utilities that are impacted if the police haven't gotten there yet? What are other conditions? Are there roads that are flooding that we now need to get another crew out to close roads down and put warning barriers out there? One thing to kind of keep in mind, and we preach this all the time, if somebody sees a down tree, stay away from it. There could be down wires in there. That's something that we can't even work on. And then at that point, myself, police department will notify PSEG and we'll get them involved. We offer facilities for them to stage in town as well, as a utility partner for us. So there's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of moving parts that go on behind the scenes that people aren't necessarily aware of. But we have a lot of practice at this. There's a lot of this going on a daily basis that people aren't so much aware of. Everybody kind of thinks of, the big hurricanes, the big blizzards, things of that. But we have, yesterday is a perfect example. We had threat of severe weather, thunderstorms coming through. We kind of know this time of year that those can pop up anytime. But, on Friday before everybody leaves, we make sure that, all the equipment is fueled, everything's greased up, the right buckets are on the machines. Some of them are in various parts of the town. We know exactly where they are. We know that, what dump trucks are ready to go. We have our call out list ready for our crews so that we can get out there right away. So the highway department, is virtually always ready to go, to the point that we have spare brand new chainsaws and chains and bar oil and everything on hand ready to go. The town as a whole, we have our own fueling station that is in the highway yard. So we make sure that those tanks are always at their capacity, fuel, gasoline and diesel fuel. So there's a lot, Don kind of neglected to mention Eric Haase. The town's very fortunate. Eric Haase, who's our fire coordinator for Suffolk County, is also a town employee with our Department of Public Works. So that's another pool of people that he oversees that could come in and assist in times of need, and has assisted in times of need. They help the highway department all the time with winter storm response. So there's a lot going on out in Orient here. As Don also mentioned, the flooding. If you go on the maps button on the town website, there is a flood mapping interactive map that's on there that will show you shaded areas, which are boots on the ground, shaded and vetted by the highway department and the town engineer as the areas that are areas of concern that are not necessarily picked up by some of these more regional, national generated maps. So that's something to be mindful of. proactively when we pave roads, we do address these situations, whether it be regrading to hold the stormwater or the tidal water in a different location, raise roads if possible without having impact to private property. So it is something that's on the forefront of everybody's mind, and we're trying to work through the problems one at a time. The causeway is a New York State road. We have brought this up to New York State. It's hopefully something that they are thinking about, when they look at doing normal resurfacing projects on that roadway. Hopefully raising it will be something that is addressed at that point in time. Same with the utility wires. There we have requested from PSEG. We have basically twice a year a representative from PSEG will come out and have a meeting with myself and the supervisor typically to let us know about utility projects that are going to happen in the town. And this is always brought up of, increasing the inspection schedule on the telephone poles and wires and all of the bracketry and hardware on there, because they're obviously in a pretty extreme marine environment, and there's a lot of stress on the poles as well. So there's a lot of that going on behind the scenes that might not seem like a much, but it is a lot in preparation and getting us in the best possible scenario for sort of weather condition that might come through. We're going to hold questions to the end, or
We're going to hold questions
okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate that. I'd like to next introduce Lieutenant Bob Haase. I'm very pleased to introduce Lieutenant Bob Haase, who represents the very best of Southold Town community policing. Every day, our police officers do far more than respond to emergencies. They build relationships, solve problems, protect our neighborhoods, and provide reassurance during times of uncertainty. Their dedication, professionalism, and commitment to public service make our community safer and stronger. Lieutenant Haase has served with the Southold Police Department for the past 15 years and was promoted to lieutenant a little over a year ago. A lifelong resident of Orient, he's one of ours, who now lives in Southold. He oversees the department's detective division, communications center, and records division. He also plays a key role in the town's emergency management program, helping coordinate emergency preparedness, planning, and response to significant incidences affecting our community. Please join me in welcoming Lieutenant Bob.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting us to speak today. As someone who grew up in Orient, it's very meaningful for me to be here today. I'm sure, as all of you know, living in Orient is a great quality of life, but it also presents some unique challenges, as Don and Dan have both spoken about. We have limited access routes and greater exposure to the weather conditions that can affect travel and our emergency response. And as we've spoken about, that's why preparing early is very important. When most of you think about the police department, I'm sure you're thinking about the officers that are showing up at your door when you dial 911. And while that's certainly the largest part of what we do, our role when it comes to emergency management and preparing for and responding to these emergency situations is much broader. Emergencies are community-wide events. Like Don spoke about, it involves the fire departments, multiple other agencies, and our job is to work with all these different partners to keep people safe before, during, and post incidents. Like Don spoke about earlier, emergency management in Southold Town is a team effort. Don named a lot of the different team members on the committee, and that includes all the fire departments, the highway department, the Department of Public Works. If we need outside resources, we reach out to Suffolk County, to New York State, Red Cross, utility companies, and local civic groups like yourselves all work together towards the same goals of saving lives and protecting property. And all of this preparation starts before the emergency actually happens. And we are constantly monitoring the weather and emergency notifications. We get emails through Suffolk County OEM and through the National Weather Service, so we're always aware of what's going on around us and when these events are going to happen. We participate in regular planning meetings. We make sure we have the proper staffing and resources in place. Just like Dan spoke about, if there is going to be a major event that could potentially flood over on the causeway, we always make sure that we station an officer in Orient. We currently have 2 officers that live in Orient, so we would try and utilize them depending on scheduling. And if not, we station an officer, and they would stay at the firehouse throughout the event. So all of the preparation that we do allows us to respond quickly during the event. We plan and train beforehand so that when these emergencies occur, we're able to respond efficiently. And just as importantly, and the reason that we're all here today, is that there are all things that you can do before an emergency to improve your own safety. Some of these things you can do include, and Don listed a lot of these earlier, but having several days of food and water, any medications that you may need. If the causeway gets cut off and you're not able to get to the pharmacy, you want to have those extra medications on hand. Ensure you have proper fuel for your vehicles and your generators. Your phones are charged, flashlights available, and most importantly, know where to get your official information from. Ms. Ash mentioned earlier how you guys have an email list. The town also has, if you go on the town website, there's the Notify Me. It's another email list you can sign up for, email and text notifications. You can sign up for multiple different lists. They have ones that'll notify you when there's town meetings, but then there's also a emergency notification list. So we would use that as one avenue of communication for if we had to do evacuations, or if we were opening shelters, or there was different alerts that we were going to put out throughout the town. There's also, it's called Smart 911. We encourage everyone to create a profile on there, smart911.com. You create a username and a profile, and you can put as much or as little information in there as you want. So with the day of cell phones now, the majority of our 911 calls come in via cell phone, not so many as landline. And when it was landline phones, we would get your name and your address and your phone number. With cell phones, we're getting your phone number and we're getting your GPS location. But with these profiles that you can create through Smart 911, when you dial 911, any information that you put in your profile, the 911 operator will see. We cannot see that information if you don't dial 911. We do not have access to that database. It's linked to our 911 system. So if it recognizes your number as calling, it shows up that you have a profile available. And again, there's a multitude of information that you can put in, but you just choose what information. So you can put, if you want to put emergency contacts in there, you can put if you have pets, you can put if you have health conditions, the vehicles that you drive, if you have a alternate residence, there's a ton of information that you can put in there. So that's one thing to consider when preparing for emergencies. And as far as the other avenues of information that we put out, this Smart 911 profile, the Suffolk County OEM has access to be able to send out directed notifications via Smart 911 based off of if you put in that you have health conditions or medical needs, they can direct communications through this Smart 911 based off the information you put into the Smart 911 profile, so that resources can be directed to you. Recommend everyone follow, if you have social media, the Southold Police Department has a Facebook and an Instagram account that we use to distribute information. And as well as the Southold Town also has a Facebook page that if we're going to be putting out any type of media releases, if we're going to be sending out any information via the town's notification system, it will always be posted on our social media account as well. And this was already mentioned, but I'll reiterate it. One thing that's especially important here in Orient and elsewhere on the North Fork is that many residents have homes elsewhere. So like Don mentioned, if you have another home or another safe place to go outside of the storm's track, we encourage everyone to consider that. Doing this will keep you safer and reduce demand on shelters if we have to open them for evacuations. During an emergency, you can expect that we will be responding to emergencies as long as the weather conditions allow. If the weather conditions deteriorate so much, if the winds get extreme, then oftentimes we do have to have our officers stand by at the firehouse until it's safe for them to respond. Extreme flooding is going to involve a lot of resources for us to get to you. We usually have to utilize the fire departments with their high water trucks. So these are all things to keep in mind and to pay attention to when deciding on whether or not you're going to remain at your residence. Throughout any events, we'll be working closely with the highway department and the utility companies to block off flooded roadways or blocked roadways and securing any damaged areas. So you can all best assist us by staying off the roads and not driving through standing water and staying away from downed power lines. And keep in mind that recovery often lasts a lot longer than the storm. During Hurricane Sandy, it was 4 or 5 days before we got power back out here, right, Andy? Depending on where you are. I mean, we're fairly fortunate out here because of the power going to Plum Island that it's usually a priority. But if you're on the side streets, it can often take a little bit longer. And just one last note, you know, the responsibility of emergency preparedness is something that we all share, and the more prepared that everyone is here, the safer our entire community will be during these events. That's all.
Do I need it?
I think so.
Really?
I don't know. Let's try it. All right. So last but certainly not least is the Orient Fire Department. Our volunteer firefighters are among the finest examples of neighbors helping neighbors. They answer the call at all hours, often leaving their families, jobs, and daily lives to protect our homes, respond to emergencies, and save lives. Their dedication, courage, and selfless service makes our community safer every day. They freely give their time, training, and expertise not for recognition, but for a deep commitment to serving the neighbor when they are needed most. We're going to have Burke. Hang on one second. I got to turn the page. This is Burke Liburt. Burke Liburt has been a resident of Orient for many years and an Orient Fire Department member for more than 20 years. He's a former EMT and firefighter and currently serves as a company chaplain. I asked him for some information about how and why he joined OFD, and he wrote me, some 25 years ago, while commuting back and forth from Manhattan, we stopped to say hello to then Chief Billy Rose, who was also the brother of your daughter's best friend. And the chief greeted him and said, "How'd you like to be an EMT?" Burke said he thought Billy was kidding. So he said, "Sure." 6 months later, he was certified as an EMT, and that began his journey. Burke is going to talk to you about the rewards of volunteering with OFD and how you can become one of our local heroes by joining the Orient Fire Department, either as a fire department or EMT. And you're also going to talk a little about operations of responding to emergencies, what OFD would do if there was a hurricane or some sort of emergency event in town. Would you like to come up here and use whatever you feel comfortable with?
Thank you. I think that you would like to know about our physical resources, our equipment resources. And well, Andy will kill me for pointing to him, but we have sitting here Andy Rorody, who is also a commissioner, who is much more conversant with the equipment than I am. I mean, I could talk to you about it, but then he'd kill me because I would, not do that. Andy, could you just talk about the equipment that we have, both marine? Oh, you want me to do this?
Well, I was going to give him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Give it to him.
Here we go. And then if you can use
Andy's
this
going to talk
microphone.
about our physical resources.
You want to come up or talk? Yeah.
We have several fire trucks. We have our main attack truck, which carries our rescue tools for MVAs, which is 811, and that's about 5 years old now. We have a tanker, carries 2,500 gallons of water. It's also a pumper. We have a second tanker that carries 3,000 gallons, and it is also a pumper. Because since we have no fire hydrants in Orient, we got to bring our own water. And we do have the ambulance, and we have several small vehicles, pickup trucks and things like that to get around.
How about boats?
Yes, we do have boats. We just got another boat to replace our oldest boat, and it's a 28-foot Parker that we keep at the point with twin engines on it. We have one boat at the marina, the yacht club, and then we have an inflatable boat, which we replaced with a new one a couple of years ago. So we can do just about anything.
And how about high water?
Yes, it's an old Army truck, and you can use it for high water. Yeah, and a brush truck. Well, for brush fires, it can go off road. It carries water and pump. We've used it here several times, and we've also been on mutual aids to actually West Hampton and Manaville and Riverhead.
Thanks, Andy. Is that working? Okay, good. Thanks, Andy. Thank you, Jane. My introduction to the Orient Fire Department may appear somewhat casual, but the experience grew richer and more satisfying over the years. There are many opportunities to volunteer in Southold, Cast, Historical Society, Eastern Long Island Hospital, but we're here today to talk about working with the Orient Fire Department and how we can further strengthen the ties to the community. The Orient Fire Department resources are unique, as Andy has pointed out. They're comprehensive, but they're only as good as the people who make it happen. The Orient Fire Department are volunteers who become expert in ensuring your safety through emergency preparedness and the application of the resources that Andy has described. Every member has gone through rigorous training to prepare for these. Firefighters attend a formal training at the Suffolk County Fire Academy within the first year of membership. It's a fantastic course covering areas of weather, engineering, smoke hazard safety, building construction. It's a course in sort of engineering and physics that you probably have never been exposed to. It's a 15-week course, only once a week, providing the basics of understanding and execution to protect you. Just once a week, though. EMTs take the EMT basic course, much more than a first aid course. EMT basic covers 150 hours of classroom and clinical interaction, including with the New York State examination. By the way, a number of EMTs are also firefighters. OFD training is ongoing each month for both firefighting, marine applications, and rescue squad activity. Now that may seem a little overwhelming, but I can tell you that in my experience over, good grief, almost 25 years, has been rewarding and stimulating. OFD is not a social club, but there is a bond of camaraderie, certainly humor. You can ask Andy because I'm the butt of his humor most of the time, and relationships that are uniquely satisfying. OFD is a highly diverse group of people from every conceivable walk of life and education. It's a truly satisfying relationship. So how would you find out if OFD could be attractive to you? Well, of course, you could talk to members. Hopefully you know a few. Our members tend to be self-effacing, and you may not be aware that your neighbor is a member. But certainly go to our website, www.orientfd.org, orientfd.org. It's a very clear website, and go to talk to us. We will get back to you. And become a member. You can also click on that. Any questions? It's really a lot of fun. Yes. Pardon? How many Active members, we're approaching 40, aren't we? Yeah. We just, in fact, two people have just joined. Jeff King, whose dad was a member. Jeff will go through training. And I've forgotten his name, but he's the fellow who just bought the property of the Orient Candyman. Terrific guy. And he's joined the department. So actually, we have a quite healthy, growing membership. The training that I referenced may seem daunting, but at no point was that the case. I can tell you that, sort of an anecdote, when I finished my EMT training, the chief thought it would be a great idea if I took firefighter 1. I said, "You've got to be kidding, I'm a city guy, I don't know anything about that." So I took the course quite reluctantly. I have to tell you, it was one of the most rewarding experiences that I've had. That includes training in the Army. Courses taught by FDNY chiefs and Long Island chiefs. They have all natural teachers. They do with a sense of humor, understand and grasp the dynamics. Great. I could pass it today, but that was a great experience. Yes. Are all of the members? Say to me again. Are all of the members full-time residents? No, we're all, the fire police are the issue of safety of our teams. EMTs, the ambulance and many occasions, park alongside the road, you have no idea. Not to pay attention. So their role is to ensure the safety of our members, whether it's at a fire scene, indeed even on the generally speaking, our trained firefighters very much aware of the dynamics of what goes on, and they are out on every single call.
Question for Dan. So
Sure.
The flood maps are on the website. How do you access them?
On town website, there's maps.
There's a few different maps.
Typically, they will not stage east of the causeway. That has always been the historical nature of it. Now, if something really drastic was going to happen, potentially they could change something, but typically they would stage them in Peconic, maybe in Greenport, but typically in Peconic.
The local fire departments and the police departments are going to be the first responders to a maritime emergency out here. the Coast Guard in the last 5 or 6 years. The finances of supporting them, the number of younger people that have volunteered to join the Coast Guard, rather the other services are down. And it's interesting, we just had this conversation on Monday. We don't realize it, but the Coast Guard vessels that we might depend on here have been reassigned to war areas around the world, and they're just not here. So currently, specifically right now, we only have 28 and 41-foot patrol boats that are available. The nearest Coast Guard cutter is someplace up around Cape Cod or down around New Jersey. And that is from Amal Shahadre. Some of you may know him. He is one of our principals in the Coast Guard Auxiliary out here on the North Fork Flotilla. So if there's an emergency on the Cross Sound Ferry, or if there's a large sailboat out there, or even the boat coming from Plum Island going to Connecticut or coming back here, or anything up in the Peconic Bay area, the first responders are going to be the police boats and the local fire department boats. And at this point, I'm pretty sure all of the departments, the 6 departments in our division, have boats and in the water, and also they all float, but the inflatables. Thank you. Yep, senior moment there, where they can run down, take it off a trailer, and go into the Sound or go into the bay. So it's going to be your local people. The Coast Guard will come, but they're not going to be there first.
They won't come from Montauk?
Let's see, we talked about that. Montauk, let's see, we had Montauk, we had Santa Mauritius, and Shinnecock. And of those 3 stations, they could come around, but they're not here for a fast response. They'd have to come all the way out. And of course, they're also concerning themselves with ocean rescues and inside Shinnecock Bay, and then inside Fire Island, between Fire Island and the mainland. The truth of it is, as Amal was telling us, the resources from the Coast Guard are not what we might go to bed sleeping thinking about at night. And right now, the big issue is so much of the Coast Guard, the larger Coast Guard boats, are reassigned to peacekeeping and being out at war. So it's going to be your local resources that are going to come to you. Now, in addition, Suffolk County Sheriff, they have a patrol boat that's out in the bay quite often, and also the DEC has some boats that be out and about. So there are many resources here in the Peconics and up into the Sound that are local, and they're going to be the first responders going to something like that. And Bob, you want to add to it from the Marine Police side?
We have had recent trainings with the Cross Sound Ferry and multiple outside agencies. So obviously the Orient Fire Department and the Southold Police Department will be the first responding agencies. But as soon as we determined that it was an incident of high magnitude, we'd be calling in multiple other fire departments, other law enforcement agencies, other resources. Like Don said, the sheriffs have a boat in the area, the New York State Police, the DEC, East Hampton has multiple vessels. They're not that far away. So we would be calling in resources from all throughout the area to assist us with if something was to ever occur. And we have trained on situations like that. The fire department doesn't have a boat, but they obviously do have the ferries, and then their security team has a boat over there, and they have responded to maritime emergencies and assisted us in the past.
Those budget cuts affect all of us at some level. Absolutely. Coast Guard.
we get a lot of grant funding through FEMA, or we apply for a lot of grant funding through FEMA and through the federal government. We haven't seen any effect on that yet, but it's fairly recent.
I'd have to say hurricanes are the most hurricanes. Of the top 5 emergencies that we would, the top 2. I could think of 5. Seriously, our primary potential is a hurricane, like the hurricane of 38 that we've all heard about. Those are the situations that we spend a lot of time talking and preparing for. As our climate has changed, it's not necessarily a hurricane, but we have seen tremendous flooding from nor'easters. We have seen tremendous flooding just from an easterly, not a storm, but just an easterly onshore wind during a full moon and high tides. So, yes, the hurricanes are what get a lot of traction. Following that would be preparation for flooding. We've had situations where we have lost gas service in the wintertime to the entire North Fork because somebody with a backhoe happened to cut the main pipe. Now the issue is, what do we do with all of our residents who have gas heat? And it's going to be a day or a day and a half before they get gas back. And then every house that's serviced, they have to send somebody to purge it, start up the heat. That was a big one. Winter storms. Winter storms are something that we spend time talking about and preparing because it's going to impact you. We have gone so many years with mild winters. And boy, we had a good old-fashioned winter this last year. 28, 22 inches of snow, wind blowing, and you can't see to drive. And your best thing is you shelter at home, stay home. I was amazed between 2015 and when I came back to start doing classes here a couple of years ago. I asked the question, how many people here in Orient in the class have electric generators? How many of you have generators at home? I can tell you that the first time I did the classes, hardly anyone had them. So when you're looking at a winter storm, the electric's going to go out. If you've got a home generator, you keep your heat on. Well, now if you've got a gas-fired, yeah, you got to. Now, do we have gas out? We don't have gas this side of the causeway, do we? They got natural gas out here? Okay. I know a lot of people use propane tanks. So, those from a natural type disaster, hurricanes, flooding, winter storms, and then from man-made issues, loss of gas, loss of electricity. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just make one comment. I mean, to that end with the generator, yes, there is National Grid out here. There is street gas available, but that's a preparedness sort of decision that you have to make when you're looking at a generator. What type of generator do you want to get? What do you want as a fuel source? Do you want 5-gallon gas cans? Do you want to go with a street gas, or do you want to go with a propane tank that is full and is yours to control? So those are all kind of got to be part of your preparedness ideology, I guess you could say. The map, to get back to you, is on the highway department page. They moved the link for whatever reason. So if you go to the highway department page on the town website, it will be in the leftmost column, and it says town highway flooding issues. So just for that. But one big part of preparedness that, you asked about events, I think the overarching thing that everybody can do is the education component of it, because it's not so much about what the event is, but the education that you need of what your individual situation is. Bob mentioned before about medications, things of that nature, pets that you have to take care of, elderly, family members, whatever it may be. it's no kind of surprise there's a lot of newer residents to this area that don't necessarily understand what our capabilities are, what life is going to look like after 30 inches of snow or a hurricane blows through or things of that nature. So familiarizing yourself and your neighbors and people around you just to kind of be educated as to kind of what they should expect and how they should be prepared for their own situation would be my advice.
As far as Millstone goes, the mainland of Southold is not within the main evacuation zone, but it's Fisher's Island, which is a part of Southold town, and we do participate in regular planning meetings with them. We have monthly communication tests with them. We have a radio network as well as a phone and email communication test that they do monthly, and the communications involve us at the police department and the emergency management team, as well as the Fisher's Island Fire Department and Millstone. And then Plum Island is also involved with as far as the radio communications go. We did a drill with Fisher's Island. Was that last year where they did the evacuation? They actually acted out a evacuation of the islands. They had some volunteers. Everyone got on the ferry, and the ferry took them over to Connecticut, and they had buses waiting and took them to a relocation point. So that is something that we do think about and prepare for, and on a quite regular basis.
Any other questions?
I think you mentioned.
It's out there. It's on the website. That's what. Yes. Mm-hmm. So we focused on town-owned infrastructure on that map. Obviously, we didn't devote any resources to the private aspect of it. The private roads. I kind of touched on that before. Orient is a bit disproportionate in the amount of private roads, more so than is typically found. So about 12 to 15% of the roads in Orient are privately owned. We're not really entirely familiar with those. If a tree or something comes down, we won't, on regular circumstances, go out there. However, Don said if we are under a state of emergency and somebody, a fire department says, hey, we have an EMS call up there, we need help, we will go out and get the ambulance into that home for the person to get the care that they need. And the state of emergency allows us to be able to do things like that. 25, is obviously the big concern is the causeway. The state did do a really nice job with a project, road raising and drainage project out by Orient by the Sea Marina last year, and that's been very successful. 25 is generally in pretty good spot, pretty good shape everywhere except for the causeway through Orient. So, the bulk of what you need to have captured will be on that map for Orient particularly.
Are there any more questions? I'm going to put some of the Smart 911 and the maps. I had to obtain that. I'll put that update on our Orient Association Emergency Management website and also in the next Orient Association newsletter. Anything else you want, please get back to us. But what an excellent presentation from these four gentlemen. Thank you.